Hey everybody, in the last video I promised a standalone video for Chris's vegan tofu chashu, so here it is. Thanks again to Chris for putting out his recipe for all of us to try, and you should go follow him on Instagram if you're not. Alright, let's get right into this one. So obviously we're going to need to use tofu to make tofu chashu. You're going to need to use firm or extra firm tofu for this. Try not to make a huge mess when you're opening it. Anyways, get your tofu out of the container and give the block a quick rinse. We're going to need to press out the extra liquid, so I'm going to wrap the tofu block in a couple layers of paper towels, then I'm going to weigh it down with something. Real vegans have this thing called like a tofu press or something, but I don't have that, so I just tried a bunch of things, tried to play like Jenga with the canned goods that I have. Finally, I realized that a pot filled with canned goods probably would be the best thing, so I got that set on the tofu and let that sit for about 20 to 30 minutes to squeeze out the liquid. So while the tofu is getting pressed, we can start our marinade. In a small bowl, add 4 tablespoons of soy sauce, 2 tablespoons of mirin, 1 tablespoon of rice vinegar, 2 teaspoons of some kind of neutral vegetable oil, 3 cloves of crushed garlic, and a teaspoon of grated ginger. I'm cheating here, I'm using the tube ginger. Give that all a mix and then set that on the side. After 20 or 30 minutes, check on your tofu and it should be, well, pretty firm, or firmer than before anyways. I don't really know how to classify this. Anyways, take that block of pressed tofu and slice it into half-inch slices. Try to keep them as even as possible so they'll cook evenly and at the same speed. Get the slices laid out nicely in a single layer in some kind of container and then pour the marinade over all the pieces of tofu. Swirl the container around a bit to get them all well coated and let that rest for an hour. Preheat your oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, then take your tofu out and lay it into a single layer on a baking sheet lined with parchment paper. You're gonna bake this for 30 minutes total, so bake it for 15 minutes, then take it out of the oven, flip over all the slices, and then bake it for another 15 minutes. After the 30 minutes are up, cool down the tofu and then get them into an airtight container and let that rest in the fridge for at least 4 hours, preferably overnight. After resting, you can prep your basting sauce. I'm using 4 tablespoons of this smoked shoyu I have in my shop, but you can just use regular soy sauce and 3 milliliters of liquid smoke. 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of maple syrup and 2 teaspoons of neutral vegetable oil. Give this all a quick stir and then get your tofu slices laid out onto a wire broiling rack. Baste the slices with the sauce that you just made and then get them into the oven and broil them until the edges get slightly charred, about 3 to 5 minutes. Take it out of the oven, flip them over, baste them again, and then get them back into the oven for about the same time until they're slightly charred again. And then your vegan tofu chashu is done. So obviously this doesn't taste like pork, it doesn't have that rendered pork fat pork belly would have, but it does taste great as a topping for ramen, and it has this very similar mouthfeel to maybe shoulder chashu. If you're making vegan ramen, I can highly recommend you give this one a try. Thanks again to Chris for sharing his recipe. He has it all typed out in his Instagram, so you can check that out at vegan.tanmen. I'll link up his episode of the podcast in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all the Patreon supporters, and just thank you everybody for all the support. See you guys in the next video. Peace.